Hello everybody. Why am I frozen? There we go. Got hung up for a second. I hope you're all having a great holiday weekend. It's Saturday and I'm recording some videos for my classes and doing some grading. So I hope you enjoy it. I hope you don't work like I do, but I'm kind of a workaholic. So in this session we're going to talk again about Brian H. Smith, religion and politics in Latin America, Catholic versus Pentecostalism. And so now we're in chapter 3. We just finished the chapter on the expansion of Pentecostalism. Now we're going to talk about Catholicism since Vatican II. This is actually, to some degree, post-liberation theology Catholicism, after the reign of John Paul II began. So without further ado, I'm going to go to the screen share and pull up my notes. And here we go. Let me make this a little bit bigger so you can read it easier. So the name of this chapter is Assessment of Contemporary Catholicism. It begins on page 51. One of the reasons why I selected this book is it's a very short book compared to most academic books. So since Catholicism got drawn into a number of human rights versus the state conflicts in Argentina, Brazil, Chile in the 1970s, and then in the late 80s and early 90s, or actually beginning around 1979 with Nicaragua, and then later in the 1980s with the El Salvadoran Civil War, the Catholic Church has tried to steer a course towards being a mediating entity in an attempt to resolve conflicts and to speak up on behalf of peace between governments and opposition. And the small base communities, the SEBs, have continued to focus on serving the wider social and economic needs of respective neighborhoods, even though the movement is not quite as strong as it once was. Even with a greater number of conservative bishops, of course that's because John Paul II was appointing conservative bishops to replace the more liberation theology-oriented bishops, there has been no decline in statements and actions on various public policies in every Latin American country. So first, Smith analyzes social justice as a theme. In Brazil and Chile, bishops helped encourage a return to democracy. This was basically in the 1980s, beginning around 1985 in Brazil. I don't remember the exact dates in Chile. In El Salvador, Nicaragua, and Guatemala, later on in the later 80s, and in the 1990s in Mexico, Peru, and Colombia. I don't know if you remember the Zapatista uprising of rural peasants in Chiapas and Mexico protesting against the implementation of NAFTA. In Argentina in 1997, the Catholic Church mediated an agreement between the government and the poor. The Church addressed human rights abuses in Chile, El Salvador, and Guatemala, and created truth commissions. In Santo Domingo, in the Dominican Republic, the Fourth General Assembly of CELAM, the Latin American Bishops' Council, met in October 1992. That was, by the way, the 500th anniversary of the arrival of the Spanish in the Bahamas and the Dominican Republic. Undoubtedly the reason why they held it in Santo Domingo. Despite the growing numbers of conservative bishops, the rhetoric of the hierarchy continued to defend human rights and to speak in social justice terms, such as preferential option for the poor, and criticism of economic neoliberalism. If you're not familiar with the term neoliberalism, you can kind of roughly translate it as hyper-liberalism or hyper-laissez-faire. For example, neoliberals would be strongly in favor of global trade pacts or regional, such as NAFTA or the TTP. And many populists resent neoliberals for they consider them responsible for the offshoring of American manufacturing jobs. The Mexican bishops in 1992 warned against a record poverty reaching intolerable levels. Here we are in 2020, and if anything, it's gotten worse, and causing a grave crisis of social inequality, creating two Mexicos. They also criticized NAFTA. A second theme that the church has focused on is personal morality. The bishops have been outspoken against sexual morality. Now remember, this book was written in 1998, so some of this material is a bit dated. Chile still does not legally recognize divorce. Again, 1998, I think it changed in 2004. In all Latin American countries besides Cuba, abortion on demand is illegal. Again, 1998. In this area, we see how important it is to have current information, and how badly a book written in 1998 could become dated. In 2019, abortion, however, is still prohibited in the Dominican Republic, El Salvador, Haiti, Honduras, Nicaragua, and Suriname. Only Cuba, Guyana, and Puerto Rico and Uruguay allow abortions without any restrictions as of 2019. The Catholic bishops have strongly opposed reforms, but also in 1993 criticized political leaders with the policies that aggravate poverty, and they denounced the killing of abandoned street children in Brazil and Colombia. I lived in Colombia, in Bogota, in 1987 and 1988, and I remember every morning there would be new reports of dead bodies of homeless children found, mostly teenagers, but not always, found assassinated because of cleanup squads that felt like they were future criminals or terrorists or drug dealers, and they needed to be eliminated. Horrible. In 1998, Argentine bishops criticized family planning as a step toward abortion. My cigar keeps wanting to go out. Number 3, defending against Pentecostalism. Oops, I went too far. Due to the growing religious pluralism in society, Catholicism's spiritual monopoly is steadily declining. And of course, there's different opinions about this. There are those that decry the loss of a spiritual monopoly for Catholicism as a loss of a moral consensus. There are others who are enthusiastic about a growing pluralism of religions, which they feel allows more freedom in society. In Bolivia, the Constitution declares that the state recognizes, sustains the Apostolic Roman Catholic religion in Bolivia in 1992. In Argentina and Ecuador, there was a push to include Catholic religion in classes in public schools. What's wrong with this? Hold on 1 second. Let me be right. In 1997 in Nicaragua, the Minister of Education was a conservative Catholic with close ties to the Cardinal. That was a big change from 1979, when a number of Catholic priests were in the Sandinista government and were scolded by John Paul II for being involved in Marxism. In Paraguay, there was a discussion about reducing the annual subsidy to the Catholic Church. In 1992, Chilean bishops issued a paper called Protestants and Sex, where they warned against the negative impact of the sex. That's S-E-C-T-S, not S-E-X. In order to compete better with Pentecostals, the bishops decided to adopt some of the Pentecostals' own strategies. The Catholics are using media and going door to door in campaigns to reach out to Catholics who do not regularly attend Mass. There was a priest in Brazil called Father Rossi, who I believe was he was a singer and entertainer, and he was kind of like a TV evangelist, but a Catholic in Brazil in the 1990s. The bishops have been increasingly emphasizing the importance of spiritual formation of lay Catholics at the grassroots level. And they have a number of initiatives that are designed just for that purpose, to do a better job of teaching the catechist, or teaching, discipling, forming young Catholics or new Catholics in their understanding of Catholic doctrine and practice. The Guatemalan hierarchy encouraged the role of the Catholic Charismatic Movement, known as the CCR, which shares several of the characteristics of Pentecostal Protestantism, emphasizing the Holy Spirit, personal and communal prayer, speaking in tongues, and healing. Back in the 1980s, I attended some Catholic Charismatic movement, Catholic Charismatic meetings in Michigan, I think it was, and there was a lot of crossover and a lot of interconnections between the Charismatic movement, which was Protestant, and the Catholic Charismatic movement, beginning around 1979 in Duquesne University in Pittsburgh. The Brazilian bishops in 1994 also voiced support for the Charismatic movement. Of course, they saw this as an alternative, as a way of competing with Pentecostalism. And also, supporting the Catholic Charismatic movement was a way of taking letting some of the air out of the tires of the liberation theology movement, which is very much concerned about the public sphere and about structural issues, whereas the Catholic Charismatic movement was much more privatized, individual, much more focused on spirituality, private spirituality. So characteristics of Catholic activists: poverty has gotten worse. I must have mistyped that. Poverty has worsened and declined. It's contradicting itself. So poverty has gotten worse with the return of democracy in Latin America. Local based communities in the 1970s and 80s were often a havens for leftists persecuted by their respective governments. In some base communities, these are the SEBs, Comunidades Eclesiales de Base, or grassroots Christian communities. Some of the base communities made the decisions to leave the SEB movement and join revolutionary organizations to fight oppressive regimes. I did some research on this for my dissertation in the case of Brazil. Christian and Marxist collaboration was tacitly, if not openly, encouraged by some priests and nuns supervising local church communities, and the resort to violence as a last means of defense against pressure was accepted. This incurred the wrath of the military and the opposition of the Vatican. We're going to be watching Romero at some point in this course, and that's a great illustration. The life of Oscar Romero shows is a great illustration of this fact. So there's a number of scholars who have found a heterogeneous pattern among the SEBs. In other words, diversity, in which many of them are more focused on spirituality than social justice or politics. And there's a list there: Hewitt, Burdick, Levine, and Berryman, if you're putting together a bibliography. Other studies would include Stein, Cleary, and Fleet, and Adrianse. I've read most of these. In some, the political profile of Catholic activists and sub-members resembles in some ways that of the Pentecostals. Some weaknesses and latent tensions in the church. There's a number of clerics who still want to preserve their authority and are uncomfortable with giving the laity more autonomous roles in the church ministries. And Smith estimates that there's three kinds of Catholics in Latin America. Sacramental Catholics, which tend to be about 15 to 20% of Latin America, except in Mexico where it's higher. Highly committed Catholics, which is about 5% of the baptized, or cultural Catholics, which are the ones that tend to be the most nominal. 300 million of those in Latin America. And to serve this nearly 40 million block of all Catholics are only 40,000 priests and 120,000 nuns. I'll let you do the math, but it's not anywhere near what the Pentecostal ratio of pastor to parishioner is. So the conclusion is that there are now more committed Pentecostals fishing for souls in Latin America than there are committed Catholics. Catholicism has recently enjoyed an overwhelming cultural monopoly, and it has been a common assumption that even the non-practicing are part of the church. So some more scholars who discuss some of these issues about the Sebs are Carol Jorvis, Andrew Stein, and Christian Smith, one of my favorites. Newer priests are products of a more conservative traditional training process. The church is likely to lose some of its most experienced and committed lay leaders who are influenced by Vatican II. They're getting older. I was in high school during Vatican II, so it gives you an idea. The reason why newer priests are more conservative, or have been through a more conservative training process, is because of the changes that John Paul II implemented. That may be changing now under, it wouldn't have changed under Benedict, but it might be changing under Francis. I would love to update some of this for 2020. Brazil is the country with the largest number of baptized Catholics in the world. It's also the country with the largest number of Pentecostals in the world, which makes Brazil a very interesting case study. However, overwhelming numbers of Catholics ignore the church teachings on family morality. In other words, the church teaches against family planning, but most Catholics practice it. And so there's a disconnect between the leaders and the rank and file. So that is what the author calls a breakdown of Catholic teachings on morality and a sharp and growing disparity between the moral positions of the hierarchy and the actual moral practices of the laity. In Mexico, 74% of Catholic faithful favored contraception. Mexico is one of the strongest. Catholicism is stronger in Mexico than in most other countries. Also in Colombia. Nevertheless, 50% of Mexican Catholics approved of abortion in special circumstances. In Peru, the divorce rate is tripled, and it's similar in Chile. So these findings show a trend towards more independent moral thinking among Catholics, and it was confirmed by Daniel Levine in his study of Catholic activists in Colombia and Venezuela. Daniel Levine says they remain persons committed to the church but no longer see themselves as lesser or subordinated individuals. Personal independence is prized and is best expressed in an ethic of egalitarianism. So that shows a change in thinking among the rank and file of the faithful of the Catholic Church. And I think we'll stop there and I'll continue next time. Thank you very much.